Welcome to Inner Threads, a podcast on healing, wholeness, growth, and connection. Join us for shared insights and lived wisdom as we braid and weave together our common stories and experiences to help you along your own healing path. Inner Threads is hosted by Courtney Kaplan, Jessica Luke, and I'm Bert Nelson. I'm a spiritual counselor and the executive director of a nonprofit conservation farm in Western North Carolina. I'm interested in how spirituality, science, and shamanism come together to help us heal and live more fully as ourselves.
I'm Jessica Luke. I work as a spiritual counselor, and I'm the founder of the Well-Grounded Soul and the 1440 Health Collective, a healing center in Bethesda, Maryland. I support people through times of change, helping them reconnect with their intuition, personal power, and the wisdom of the natural world.
And I'm Courtney Kaplan. I'm a coach based in Oakland, California. And after years in the corporate world, I founded Iconic Leadership Coaching. My transformative coaching helps people create a good life, both personally and professionally. And I use multiple modalities, including emotional, physical, and spiritual tools to help my clients find peace and power. Welcome to the podcast. We are back. I'm here today with my friends Bert and Jessica to talk about intention. So Bert, what would you say, what is intention? You hear people say set an intention or have an intention. What does that mean? What do you think that means, or what does that look like for you?
For me, it means like being aware of where your thoughts are and how you're directing your life force energy, however you want to define that. And so, it's understanding how your thoughts and words and actions have an effect on the world around you, and then choosing how you want to use those thoughts, words, and actions to create change in your environment, whether that's a relationship or a job or a vegetable garden. And so when I talk about being intentional, what I'm saying is really thinking about how is it that I am directing my energy and how do I want to be directing that energy, and then taking the steps in action to do so.
Yeah, for me, setting an intention kind of underlines for me kind of for the sake of what. So having an intention could be I'm going to a holiday party, but my intention is to show gratitude to the host who's been a great friend this year, or to connect with some new people at this party, or what have you. So for me, it kind of gets under the action into the point of the action of like, okay, so I'm taking some action. I want a vegetable garden, but for the sake of what? To better connect with land, to help restore my environment, to make food for my family, what have you. And I think that a lot of times that's missing in our culture. We kind of jump into the action or the goals, and we don't really think about what, for the sake of what are we doing it, or what's our intentionality.
Yeah, it reminds me of almost like an internal compass. Like if you have that directional kind of focus of, and I think Bertie said focus, like it's just my intention is to be present, or my intention is to show gratitude. My intention is to feel more love for this group, whatever it is. And it's making me think about this story because it was just such an eye-opening thing when I traveled recently, went to this cute little coffee shop, and the barista is like a one-woman show, and the coffee was incredible, and it was just a latte, not just a latte, but you felt the love in that latte. Like her intention was so focused, and she made this cute little design on the top, and then went to Starbucks and got this like very unintentionally made coffee, and it tasted very, just average, mundane, like no love or heart, like the intention of love going into something, like going into that vegetable garden, going into whatever you're doing really makes a difference. You can actually feel it.
I think it's a great concept that, again, we hear it as a cliche, like, well, I put my heart into it, or I put a lot of love in that. But we don't really think about the fact that in our day to day and in the massive culture around us is very transactional. You type in your phone what kind of coffee you want at Starbucks, somebody slides it over the counter. That doesn't have a lot of energy or intention in it. It's just transactional. I gave you money, give me the thing. And so I think that, and we're very uneducated about the energetic power behind intention, and how much power that holds. So your point, Jessica, of like really being able to experience a difference and taste and experience and energetically, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's something that once you kind of set an intention to be intentional, it really starts to, you can see how maybe that you are aware of people that are more transactional, and as you start to move more intentionally through the world.
As we've been talking about this, I also feel like intention for me is a way of setting like a structure or a container or a framework for how I want something to be or how I want to hold something. And so, if it's art, what form is it going to be? Is it going to be ceramic or stained glass or fiber based, right? That's part of my intention in creating a piece of art. What colors am I going to use? What are those structural bits of what brings it in my vision into the world? That's from like an art piece, from a practitioner piece. How do I want to hold this container for my client who's coming to this work? Right. And that's not the same for every client because not every client is the same. And so being intentional is about being present and understanding like, how can I best serve this one individual right here, right now in that setting? And I think when we stop and ask ourselves, what is my intention here? Then that gives us a little bit of like, ooh, what was my intention? Sometimes I am like a little bit about like, oh, I might not have been as clear about this as I thought I was before asking myself that question. Hopefully, that's not the most often reaction I have, but it offers an opportunity to pause and say, how do I want to show up? How do I want to be here? How do I want to hold this? And whether that's with a family member or a loved one or a client or a piece of artwork or whatever your experience is, it's that intentional connection to the activity, to that engagement that is what makes it live. And that's, I think, in how one of the ways intention is like so important in doing what we do.
It was really interesting. Years ago, I was in a group that was kind of a mastermind group, meaning the three of us would get together. We would the leader of our group set an intention, don't necessarily set a goal, but set an intention. And then we'd set steps and be accountable to each other to meet and discuss the steps we took just to kind of get that energy and accountability factor going. And it was really funny because one of the members of our group would set an intention and then do some actions, but the action never resulted in the intention, but the intention would come about in another way. Like her intention would be to, save money to buy a new car or something. And so she would like take extra jobs or do this or that or whatever. And then suddenly she would get like a random check from somebody that was the amount that she needed for the car, totally separately from all these little busy actions she was taking. And it was really funny to see that happen again and again as an illustration of the power of just holding intention and focus. And certainly some of your actions may combine to lead you there, but sometimes it could come a whole other path or a whole other way. And it was just such a big lesson for me to remember that, as opposed to kind of set the goal, break it into small steps, knock out each step till you reach your goal. Allowing a little more space for for the the universal creative field of all things to kind of do its part, which was really exciting to see.
Yeah, it's like the opening to the mystery of when you set that intention, how the connection to the universal flow of life and that power will just start to work. I do a similar thing, and I'm not, now that we're having this conversation, I'm definitely going to do it next month, but an intention word webinar or just kind of a talk, because like here we are heading into a new year and resolution time, right? And resolutions are kind of that similar thing when you're talking about goals, Courtney, where you're like, okay, I'm going to lose 20 pounds by March and I'm going to work out 7 days a week and all the things. Then you're like, day 4, I'm sore, I'm tired, I don't have time. Like all the things come in and you're like, oh, I'm a failure. But when you reframe that to an intention, like I'm going to be more healthy this year, right? And you just leave it more spacious. I think that idea of giving space to a concept or that intentional thought, that focus, that inner compass can allow those universal mysteries to come in and guide it throughout the year, as long as you keep reminding yourself, wait, my intention is to be more healthy. And how is that going to look?
Tell us more about your webinar, your word webinar. What do you do in that?
Yeah, so I have done it a couple of years in a row where I just kind of do that, where I explain to people the difference between goals and resolutions and intentions, and then guide people through a meditation to connect with whatever word comes through. So my word for this year, for 2025, has been commitment. And it's always like when it comes in, I'm like, well, it's interesting. I don't know how that's going to play out. But then, right to your point, like with your mastermind, Courtney, like little things where you're like, oh, yeah, I'm really asking, I'm being asked to step up and commit to this thing here and not back down. And there's been other, I'm trying to think of other words, like adventure was a year that I ended up climbing a mountain for the first time. And, I didn't know, and that was in October. I didn't know in the beginning of the year in January that I was actually going to be climbing a mountain by the end of that year. Yeah, it's fun. And
Amazing.
then let people share their words. And then I try to follow up with them, every quarter or so just to remind and check in and see how people are doing with their commitment to their intention word.
It's cool. I mean, it's nice to boil down all of the noise and distraction to kind of one word that you can kind of refocus on or find yourself centering on throughout the year and returning to that and seeing it come about in unexpected ways. That's really cool. I hope you do that webinar this year.
Yes, you guys have spurred me into saying yes. That's absolutely
Do it. Do it.
Courtney, do you have any practices like that that help you be more intentional or come back to kind of a broader intention for how you want to live your life and come into the world?
Yes, I have done the one word exercise before, which I love and is really useful. And I also try and shift my goals to not being what my goal is, but shifting to what is it that I want to experience. So instead of saying, I want to lose X pounds or I want to do this or do that. Well, what is it that I want to experience? I want to experience feeling healthy and energetic. I want to experience having friends I can trust that are all around me. I want to experience feeling successful at work. I want to experience feeling supported in my life or whatever those things are. Again, trying to get to the root of what it is that I want to experience, but leaving the details out of it. And when I work with clients, I try and say the same thing, right? People say, I want a raise. I want a new title. I need to get a new job, whatever. It's like, well, what is it that you want to experience? Security, recognition, dignity, respect. That's very different than title, money, whatever, whatever.
I'm so glad I asked. That's amazing. I love that so much. And it's such a relatively simple shift in perspective, but like, wow, it seems like it would make such a huge difference in how we come to the world, how we relate to life, if we can just make that little bit of shift.
And then the bonus round of that is not only saying what I want to experience, but taking some small amount of time throughout your day, just 5 seconds here, 20 minutes there, and feel as if that already happened. So if you want to feel I have support, just what would that feel like in your body to feel like you're supported? Oh, it would feel like it would be safe. It would feel like I have someone to call if I need to. It would feel like I have more confidence because I've got someone by my side, and just kind of not only list those factors in your mind, but try and just feel it in your body. What will this be like when it's there? What would it feel like? And I found that that's a really powerful tool to kind of sort through where you put your energy and effort.
So, like embodied intention.
Embodied intention. That's a great way of putting it.
It's like getting it out of the mental. You're getting it out of the head and into that body, into the experiential stuff. So yeah, Bert, you and I were on the same page there. That's right. Do you have any intentional practices or intention setting practices, Bert?
I open each day with an intention, how I want to show up in the world. And it's like the first clear thought that I have in the day. It is something I light a candle when I do it. I mean, I have a whole altar, and I'm sure we could talk about altars and intentions. And because I do use altars as physical representations of intentions that I set. And so that's a perhaps longer conversation for another time. But when I'm starting my day, the first thing I do is light a candle, burn a little sage, and say this prayer, set intention setting. And there very occasionally are the days that start so abruptly that I something catches me before I get a chance to do that. And when I catch that, when I recognize like, oh wow, I haven't set my candle today. I haven't, lit that candle. Wow, I haven't set my intention for the day. It always amazes me how much like more chaotic the day has been. when I don't take that time to just say, like, this is how I want to show up today and this is how I want to be. And so there's almost a way in which that is like a gift to myself or a commitment to myself to show up and say, it's important that I do this, that I take the 30 seconds, like it's not a long process, right? I'm not talking about like an hour long meditation here. This is just like the 30 seconds it takes to light a candle and say, today my intention is, and then allow the day to unfold.
Yeah.
Wow. I was gonna say my day starts more like that Dolly Parton song, 9 to 5. Like, jump out of bed, stumble to the kitchen. I'm not lighting a candle or setting an intention, but I really, really like that a lot. I really like that a lot. And, Bert, you've taught me a lot about altars, and I've started to set altars. If you're listening to this and not seeing, I'm showing Jessica and Bert my little plant selection that I grabbed before jumping on this call today, and realizing what a powerful practice that is to open an altar, to have that hold intention or hold space is something that I kind of do on the side of you go to maybe a yoga class or a thing and there's an altar there, but I hadn't really connected the power of that. If you're someone that's like, yeah, I set an intention and I kind of forget it right away, to set up a candle, a little statue, a little flower, figuring something that holds that intention and also reminds you when you see that altar set. You're right, Bert. Altars is another big conversation, but it's such a great tool.
Real quick there, I think with an altar, the science nerd in me loves the fact that the act of doing it, the act of selecting an object or objects and deciding which you are going to use to set this intention with, and then doing it, that itself makes it real. It's not like you're just thinking about it. It's like when you wake up in the morning and you've had a dream that is so vivid, you are like, there is no way I can possibly forget this dream. There is no way. It is so detailed. I'm not even going to write it down because I cannot possibly forget any detail of this. And 15 minutes later, you're grasping for the slightest like themes of the dream. And it's the same way, I think, when we set intentions or resolutions or, like our regular inertia keeps us going in a particular pattern. And in this case, the altar is like a physical representation of the intention, is a way of, one, Courtney, as you were saying, like reminding you in the real world, this is a thing that I want to do, and I'm doing it. And the act of setting it is also rewiring in your brain. Just like when you write that dream down, you may never go back and look at that journal again to read what you wrote, but I promise you will remember that dream in detail. So, like that's kind of some of the science behind the intention setting that we're talking about here. So practical application. There we go.
Yeah, and what's hitting me from something that each of you said is, Bert, you were talking about when you set your intention, it's 30 seconds, even 10 seconds, right? So to the listener who's like, oh my gosh, it's going to take forever. How do I conjure up this? It doesn't have to be this big time consuming thing. And then also, Courtney, with your altar, it can be as simple as a plant and a candle, right? We don't have to overwhelm with like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do the thing. So yeah, like keep it simple, keep it really simple and find those little nuggets that will remind you, oh, that mug reminds me of that intention to slow down or, whatever it is. But it's just keeping the altar simple, keeping the intention simple. It doesn't have to be this big, overwhelming or big time consuming process to set an intention or to set an altar. It can be a candle or it can be a plant. It can be that really simple reminder of making the space to remember your intention or to sit down and have that quiet moment.
I think it's interesting just to say something that might not need to be said, but to make it explicit is when we're talking about intention or an altar or coffee made with love or any of these things, we're talking about working in a world behind the world that we live in, right? We're talking about working in an energetic world that's right behind the stuff that we see, the traffic and the commutes and the emails and all of that stuff. And this space, this energetic space, maybe you've heard it touched on in here or there, but that's a whole separate world that we can start to interact with and engage with in constructive ways. And I wanted to add that because I just realized, wow, all of this intention setting and altar, making something with love and intention. What is happening? What are you talking about? We're talking about a whole interactions of energetic worlds behind the day-to-day physical manifestation of the world, the physical objects, schedules, deadlines, that kind of thing.
I think an example of this, Courtney, is when if you've ever worked with a practitioner and you're like, wow, they seem checked out today. They're not here. They're not like, I don't feel like my therapist is hearing me or listening to me. Hopefully that's not a common experience, but it's certainly one that I've had. And it's like how we set that intention to show up really does make a difference. And I think a lot of us have had that feeling. You walk into a room after there's just been a fight, even though you don't know what's going on in that room, but you feel something like, ooh, this is uncomfortable or this is icky or awkward. I think these are some examples that I've heard people talk about. Courtney, you mentioned earlier with groups that you've worked with coming together in community and being intentional in that coming together, setting your intention together, and also a little bit about you mentioned it, and maybe you can speak to it a little bit more, the power that setting an intention in community can have, like coming together and stating it publicly. This is my intention, has some power there. And Jessica, I know you just had a holiday party and, we're talking about bringing community together. And so I'm interested in how each of you see intention and its role in community.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll start and maybe I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about this. I'll start. Often I hear people instead of setting an intention or even setting a goal, they're just ruminating in their heads, right? And it's kind of like a ping pong ball in their thought process. I should do this. I should do that. And also I should do this and I should do that. And maybe this and that. And it's just like this free floating ping ponging around or ruminating over the same things again and again and again. And that's not intention setting. There's nothing intentional about that. You're just kind of like letting your little wild dog of a mind run free. But as soon as you become more intentional and kind of pin it down, there's more power. And as soon as you pin it down, not necessarily having the same intention as other people, although that can be really powerful too, as soon as you pin it down and kind of let others witness that intention, it seems like it becomes much more powerful and there's much more potential there to activate rather than lying in your bed at 3 a.m, just letting the, random spooky thoughts generate through again and again in your mind. So often I think that we have to get out of that rumination mind games and into something more concrete, whether it's written down or an altar or an intentional way of waking up and thinking about what your purpose of the day or what you want to get out of the day. And then again, when you add the factor of community into that, it even amplifies it more, the positive aspects of that. And Jessica, got a community and the work that you do. And last night you even had a holiday party. So what are your thoughts about the power of the community with intention?
Yeah, it was a really beautiful point you made, Courtney, because it's like it was reminding me of structure. So, I run this business where everybody runs their own business inside the greater collective. So everybody's on their own, which is beautiful. And it is a bit of herding cats to get people together. And so it's reminding me of structure, like structure within the community with intention. When like in our past gatherings, it's just been kind of a free for all of socializing. Great. Everyone gets to know each other. But there was in order to deepen that sense of community, it was pretty clear to me that we needed to set an intention. And that was just an internal intention within me as the leader of the captain of the ship, essentially, is okay, let's come up with some structure to get people, kind of organized a little more. So the intention that I set was to do a little meditation to reflect on what we were grateful for in this and offer really deep insight about what they were grateful for and why and what they were bringing in and why. It proved the whole point of setting the intention. We're going to do a little structured process here so that we all get to understand from our internal world where we've been, where we want to go, and share that with this community so we're all understanding each other on a deeper level. And the feedback was incredible. And it was something actually very simple, right? Like gratitude and bringing in forward. So, but setting that intention for the community and yeah, it was a really cool experience, which you talked about, like the experience of it, right? It wasn't just a mental ruminating in their head, like they had to go into the meditation and experience it and share with the community. And I think it really had a profound impact.
It's incredibly powerful because it's easy to go to a holiday party, go in, have a couple snacks, say hello, and leave and still feel kind of lonely or disconnected. But to be able to go in, have a shared intentional experience, share a little bit about that experience with others, listen to others, listen to others share, that is a whole different ball game. I love that. I think that's great.
I was recently facilitating a corporate meeting and it was a 2-day meeting. And so they asked me to be at the dinner the first night and be prepared to participate or facilitate if that was needed. And so I put together a deck of conversation starters, to get people going at dinner. This was a group of people from all over a pretty broad geographic area coming together. Some of them were really new to the group. Some of them had been in the group for a very, very long time. And so I wanted to think of a way like, how can I really deepen this intentional engagement with this group? And so I don't talk about it. I don't, people are getting along. So I don't feel the need to like make it a thing. I just have the cards on the table when people get in and don't say anything about them. And we're eating dinner and a couple of people over from me, they notice the cards and they take the paper clip off of them and they start going through them. And immediately they start judging these cards. They start slamming these cards. Like, wow, that's an intense question. Who thought this was appropriate for a work event? This ain't dinner conversation, like all of those things. I was like, oh no, I got this wrong. Wow, I read this room really wrong. And one of the individuals that was there, she's very lovely and funny and did not withhold her opinions, and I love that. And she said, did you do this? She asked me directly, are these yours? And I said yeah, they are. And she said, what, you think we can't have conversations? And people start like getting quiet and calming down. And I said, well, I've been to a few of these corporate dinner parties where I've hoped that people were having conversations that were other than, what's going on in your job, what's going on in your office, what's going, like whatever what the weather is. And I yearn for depth of connection when I connect with people. And I'm realizing that most people don't. Like your average person is not yearning for a real deep, authentic connection with every being you come into contact with. And so I will say though, after a few glasses of wine, people started picking up the cards and talking, and there were some tears at the table. And look at how deep we can go when we ask just a few questions. If we have the courage to ask just a few questions and give just a few answers that are real and authentic. And I think that's what's important about community, is this idea of there's a place we can come to where we can be vulnerable, we can be authentic, we can ask the hard questions and have a little fun and play and share our dreams. But that's really the point. It's a way of sharing that intention to be accountable for it, right? To share what we're doing with our lives. And whether it's an AA meeting or, or a church Sunday school class or, a shamanic retreat, they are different forms of community where we are coming together and saying, I want to be here and I want to be here now. And I'm setting my intention to do this thing. And the community makes that full. Like we're greater than the sum of our parts.
Incredible, incredible. And again, it's like we all are we're human beings are wired to connect, and that can be uncomfortable at first or different than how we normally show up at things or what have you, but to take the opportunity to actually have a real conversation and a real connection is amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's making me think a little bit about, like, fear, like, I wonder, Bert, if, those questions were just kind of confronting for people and bringing up things and their fear of being vulnerable, and maybe a little bit of negative intention or people that maybe aren't always so positive and, "Oh, I'm gonna come and meet this place with gratitude and meet and be open with all these people," but people that are a little more closed off or carry a lot of jealousy and those are more, kind of dipping into a little bit of negative intentions. And most of the time things that people are really unconscious to internally. They're just kind of acting out of their fears and defensive structures. But, how that affects community too. And it's interesting that unfortunately, it was alcohol that got these people potentially to open up a little bit, or just sitting with the cards and just giving it some space. But, just with that understanding that negative intention is out there too. And people can affect communities negatively, unfortunately, with that. I mean, I've had an experience here with somebody nearby that was actively trying to inhibit progress within this organization, and it was really hard to navigate that, and we ended up having some conversations to understand why this person was acting out that way, but it was really out of a jealousy and a fear and a sense of competition, which once that became more aware, the energy has calmed down. Back to our conversation about the energy around it, like, it was really tough in the middle of it when this person was actively jealous and in an attack mode and coming at it with at the company with in the community with negative intention. But I wonder if either of you have had any experience with of how a negative intention could affect a community or organization or person.
I think, just real briefly, that the reason we're so guarded stepping into these relationships and conversations is because we're so used to being bombarded with this negative intention in the world around us. It's like, what does this person want from me now? Or, like, what's the underhanded compliment that's going to come from this friend or this boss or this parent, I've also seen it in workplace and family and friend group environments where it's like we can all get around not liking something or someone or tearing them down. And we see this a lot in social media where the tear down comments when someone's sharing their art or their beauty or their joy, and how damaging that can be, right? How hurtful that can be if you've ever been the target of it, right? And so I think these are just some real life examples that we see kind of every day if we're looking for it, of negative intention manifesting itself. And I think, Jessica, to your point, like, a lot of times it's unintentional. Like, I'm not trying to go out and hurt people's feelings, but I mean, if I were acting intentionally, then I wouldn't be acting in those ways. And so I think that's just a little bit of how I see negative intention in the world. Courtney?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was gonna say the same. Sometimes when we're confused about people's actions towards us, sometimes it has bad intent and sometimes it's just unconscious and doesn't they're not conscious of their intent when their intention may be to have power over or to maintain their control or to continue to for them to feel comfortable. Those types of things might not be conscious intentions that they're holding, but those types of desires are driving their behaviors, which don't have your best interest in mind and even their best interest really. And I think that it's a great thing to consider, if you're listening to this thinking, this is great. I love this intention stuff. I'm going to get my friends together and ask them to set intentions. You might get eye rolls or you might get, ghosted or whatever. It doesn't mean this isn't a great idea and it's a good thing to do. It's that someone's hitting kind of bouncing up against their own unconscious stuff going on or their own discomfort. But it's true that not everyone is on the good intention train.
Yeah, it can be easy to source some attempt to gain power through negativity. And it's for a lot of people kind of all that they know until they learn to find that power for themselves, be empowered and learn ways that, they can not have to rely on negativity to feel powerful. But it takes some conscious practice. But I think that's why people get unconscious about it because it's just kind of what they know or what they've been taught. You hate a certain group or you like you were saying where you get around as people conjure up around a certain topic or a certain person to not like them or not like the thing. And it builds that sense of power, which is actually not a positive source of power like love and compassion and those more empowered places where that real true positive intention can come from.
Yeah, it's funny when you're saying love and compassion and those more positive energies and fields of energy. It is interesting when you read a negative comment on social media, it's just like a couple words, right? It's just words, but it has such an impact because there is such an energy behind it. And I think you read it, or at least I read those and I feel the energy behind it, not just the words. Because actually, who cares? You don't know this person. It's a digital screen. Shut it off. Click away. Who cares? But the negative energy attached to the intention behind those words is what really lands.
What do either of you have to say about like this idea of good intentions pave the road to hell? You know, this idea of like when the result of our actions didn't go as we thought they might and it caused harm. And now we don't want to take responsibility for it. What do you say in that realm of things? Good intentions pave the road to hell.
Well, what I would say is, did you really have a good intention, first of all? Like, you may be saying, well, I was just trying to help, or I was just trying to be honest. What were you actually trying to do? Right. So I kind of take a little beef with the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I understand the spirit of that phrase of like, sure, you can think you're going to do something, but you got to take action or nothing's going to happen. And I think if there's a really bad outcomes, I would first ask myself, well, what were your true intentions beyond like, I was just trying to help. I was just trying to be honest. I was just trying to, were you trying to make yourself feel better about yourself? Were you trying to, you know, discharge some negative energy by kind of putting in that little cutting comment at the end of what you were saying? Like, just, kind of meticulously go through that to see if there were or mixed intentions, I did wanna help, but then, yeah, I did make a judgmental comment at the end or whatever. Like, I feel like this isn't just a black and white, it's a really gradient that even when you are very well practiced in having good intention and having good intent, sometimes we have to kind of go through it with even a more fine-toothed comb to see if there's mixed intention or some bad intention in there.
I completely agree with you 100%, Courtney, on that. What's the underlying motivation? And it's kind of like, sarcasm is veiled anger. You just kind of have that negative intention and you're putting some frosting or whipped cream on top of it to make it seem less bad. Oh, I was just joking. I was just giving you a hard time. So yeah, I agree with you on that. But it's also making me think about like, I don't know the exact thing, but like write your plans in pencil so that because God might have a different path for you or something to that extent. But it's like kind of what you were talking about earlier, Courtney, is like you never know how things are going to unfold. The result of your intention might look differently at the end than what you originally thought it was going to be. Or it might be showing you somewhere that you need to have a little teaching around or, um, a little life lesson on why you set that intention.
Another way of phrasing it is, does the ends justify the means? And that's probably too big a question to try to attack here in this conversation. But, in the world, you have people who are like, Bird, it's easy to say that, but like sometimes you got to fight fire with fire. Sometimes you have to fight dirty. You have to fight evil where evil's at. And I don't know that I exactly agree with that here in this place, that using negative intention to fight negative intention doesn't create anything positive, even if the short term gives you kind of that false sense of power that you were talking about, Jessica, you know?
Yeah, that's what it's making me think. They're both just trying to get power from the same negative intended energy source. So it feels like it's doing something, but it's actually just fueling the same energetic negative intention pattern.
And on the other side too, just holding the intention with 0 action, you know, it helps to take actions in a positive direction towards what you're intending to create in this world or be in this world or have in this world. Lightly held, right? Not that you're gonna be able to control the outcome of those actions. But if it's January 1st, 2026, and you're writing these beautiful intentions and then kind of never think about it again, I don't know that those intentions would hold that much power. Who knows? It may, but sometimes kind of putting your actions where your mouth is really useful in furthering that good intention.
Courtney, you were talking about the experience of things. And so it's like, a goal would be like, I'm going to chop 30 logs of wood today, but I'm doing that because I want to be healthy. And so the intention is I want to act in a way today that leaves me feeling healthy or that improves my health. And just saying that isn't enough. You still have to go do it. And I
Right.
might not get all 30 logs done because that might actually hurt me
Right.
to do, right? But if there's a point where I can listen to my body, like, oh yeah, this is a good stopping point. That was a good piece of exercise. It's that balance of action and intention and how you bring that forward in the world. And whether it's setting an altar, that is that action that's doing that, or writing down your dream that you had, or whatever, your daily intention is, I think it really does set the tone in every way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do either of you have any things you could recommend for someone who's like, okay, I like this intention setting. I want to do this intention setting, especially where as we record this, we're almost at a turn of a year. A practice or a way that they might start to play with this.
It's a great question because I think we've talked a little bit about it's not a mental exercise. It's not something that's going to come from your mind and the ruminating thoughts. So, embodiment practices, even just going for a walk in nature without headphones, just like really being present. I, th- I, l- simple breath work, just finding ways to kind of go into your inner world, which, this came out of the group meditation that I led for our little community, is that a couple people commented that they had never known there was an inner world that they could breathe into, knowing that we have that kind of energetic, soulful heart space within us that is our wise self lives, where our intuition lives, and where those suggestions for intention could be living. I think just staying open that you can access those things and that you can listen to your intuition when it comes through, and trust that if it's, a word or a phrase or, uh, you know, that that thing that you've always thought you wanted to do, I really want to be more healthy. Well, there's your intention, and that's what you focus on. And to what we've talked about, all three of us, is do you write it down? Do you put a sticky note somewhere? Do you create an altar for it? Like, actually do some sort of physical representation of the embodiment that came out, where that thought or where that idea of what the intention is, and put it in ordinary reality, right? Where that going into your inner world is kind of your little interpersonal reality, but your outer reality is where you're living. And so some sort of reminder of what that intention is, so that you keep holding it and it's not just this fleeting thought that can be lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the reason most resolutions fail, and I feel confident in saying that most New Year's resolutions fail, is because people are too rigid. And it's like, I'm going to do this thing every day. And then by day 14, if you made it that far, you miss a day and then you stumble a bit and then you miss a few more days. And then you're like, well, it was my New Year's resolution and I'm supposed to do them every day. And I missed 4 days this month. So why even bother? And then give up, right? Like that is an example of how I've seen that go. And I think it's because it's like I'm going to do this thing every day rather than I'm going to strive to feel this way every day, and know that it's not a diet. It's not 30 days and then you go back to old ways. If that's the goal, then like why bother? Courtney, to what you were saying at the very beginning, why bother? Why are you doing this? And following that. And I think we all forget, we all want there to be a routine or a really rigid, clear path and clear structure. And I want to know what the next step is and I want to know what to expect. Newsflash, we can't. We don't know, right? We can't expect what's next. Life has funny ways of reminding us of that as we go through. And so building flexibility into whatever your resolution is, whatever that practice is, I think is going to be key to success, just like the seasons change, just like, if you've got kids, your summer looks a lot different than someone who doesn't have kids, right? And so there's a way in which you can recognize that our year is going to have cycles, and that maybe the rigid structure you're thinking about on January 1 isn't going to serve you very well come July 4th. And don't let that be a stumbling block or an excuse to fail or to give up or to stop. Know yourself, be creative, be flexible, and understand what the feeling is or the experiences that you're trying to cultivate. Courtney, to go back to what you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. I think, and for me, one practice that I've had in the past that's been really useful for me to feel also the feeling of success or progress with this idea of intention is just picking something where you want to set an intention. And another way I put that sometimes is pick something I care about. So for me right now, I care about having a good relationship with my kids. They're teenagers, so sometimes it can get rocky, but I care about having a good relationship with my kids. That's important. I care about them. I want to take care of our relationship. So that's my intention. And then every Sunday, I kind of take a look and see how do I intend, what are some actions I could take to support that intention? Oh, maybe we could go get a frozen yogurt one day. Maybe we could spend a little time here, spend a little time there. Now, sometimes those plans don't come through at all, but then I'm also holding that intention through the week and noticing when the opportunity comes up to act on that intention, right? Whatever that might look like. We get someplace early and we have a second just to talk, and I don't, pick up my phone and check email or turn on some music, but just take those few minutes to kind of check in and talk or not talk and just be, or, whatever we can do. And then at the end of each week, I would look and kind of reflect on what happened and give myself credit of saying, you know what? You took that sick day and you spent some time while your kid was sick watching that movie with them, or, you know, hearing what their day is all about, even though you were kind of feeling in a rush and wanted to go do other things, whatever that is. And I think that that's useful because we get credit for the action we took, or if that action didn't come to be, anything else that might have happened that we can put in the credit column of our list, for the sake of having more confidence that we're actually living out those intentions, or living out that intention. So we give ourselves, be a little easier about it and be a little more self-compassionate about it, instead of constantly, beating ourselves into submission of being better, doing better, all the better ways of self-improvement we want to inflict on ourselves. Some kind of practice over time has really helped me calm myself and realize, like, wow, I did have intention with that. It didn't turn out the way I wanted, but it did fulfill on the intention that I had set. And that can be a lovely practice. If you're looking at a new year, or your birthday just happened or something, to say, like, well, what is one thing that I care about that I want to take care of in the next year? And how specifically do I intend to do that? And then just give it a little review once a week and see how you did, and tweak and make adjustments if you need.
I love that, and I remember you had said earlier too something about, like, how do you wanna show up in the world, right?
Yeah.
That's, like, seems like another really good prompt.
Even those things that happen that disrupt your plan, or were in the moment like a disruption of what you had thought was going to be happening that evening or that day, you look back and you're like, wow, that fit in perfectly with my intention. And wow, that worked out great. That was really an amazing diversion from where I thought things were going. It's a big help. And I think that it's, in a world where there's a lot of big plans and pushing towards big goals, it's nice to remember that 30 seconds, intention, reflection, making sure that you're centered in care, or love, or loving kindness, all of those things are a big deal and can really change the trajectory of things pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if people just set an intention to be more kind, how that could
Yes.
possibly change significant cultural kerfuffles we're going through.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I remember, years ago, it was Christmas and I was flying home to see my family, and the airports were just, like, insane. It was so crazy, and that morning I did set an intention. My travel will be smooth, and I'll be kind to everyone I meet. And I filled my pockets with those little, chocolate squares that they have at the holidays. I don't know, I just, like, filled my coat pockets with those chocolate squares, and everybody I would see, like the guy who checks your bags and the person at the ticket desk, I would just, like, say, "Thanks so much for your help," and give them chocolates and stuff. And I got, like, cut to the front of lines and scooted onto, scooted here, scooted there, got an extra drink, all the little things, as I moved through this super chaotic, super hectic space. It was almost like I had, like, a little different, I was having a very different experience. And I always remember that, of, like, before I freak out and think, like, "Oh, it's gonna be such a hassle, it's gonna be so hard," to say, like, "Wait, it's gonna be smooth, and I'll be kind to everyone I meet." And then it's like a little lovely adventure.
And the power of chocolate.
The power of a well-timed snack size chocolate bar. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So anything else, Bert, anything else you'd wanna say about intention, or thoughts that you have as we wind down our conversation?
Set them.
Yeah.
Have them. And I don't think you can have too many, like, I really don't think this is a practice that can be overdone, really, before you walk into a meeting, before you start your day, before you get on the phone, before you, whatever, set a little intention and see how that carries you through your day.
Jessica?
Yeah, that's kind of what was coming to me. It's like you'd have these short-term little things, like your example of going through the airport and traveling or a meeting, but right? Like you can have these short-term intentions plus the longer term ones, just play with it. Like bring that sense of play, which we've talked about, just have fun with it. It doesn't have to be a big serious thing, but yeah, use those simple things like what do you care about? How do you want to show up? What's important to you? Whether it's a short little phone call or a meeting or a big endeavor you wanna take personally, like getting more healthy or, you know, just play with it.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I think one thing that I'm taking out of this is kind of reminding myself, how do I want to show up today? How do I want to show up today with kindness, or I want things to go smoothly or guided by intuition, but how do I want to show up today can be such a great kind of quick way to check in with what your intention for the day is. Thank you so much, Bert and Jessica. I'm leaving with so many gems.
Me too. Thank you
Thank
guys.
you. Thank you both.
Love you guys.
Love you guys. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to check our show notes for links and resources from today's episode. And if you enjoyed this episode of Inner Threads, consider sharing it with a friend. Your ratings and reviews help others like you join the conversation. And if there's a topic or question you have that you'd like to hear on Inner Threads, drop us a line. We love hearing from you.